Ladies and gentlemen, hello from Wolfsburg and welcome to today's press conference. The automotive industry, including Volkswagen, are currently undergoing the most fundamental transformation process in their history ever. The transformation towards electric and fully connected mobility changed the vehicles completely. And this also means that the way in which we design and develop new products also changes profoundly. At the site in Wolfsburg, we've got 12,000 workers and employees working in the largest development unit of the group. Future-oriented basic technologies such as the MEB and BEM-QB platform were developed here, and they form the foundation for millions of new vehicles and the success of Volkswagen in the future. In the coming years, we will slowly but surely develop our development unit towards the new challenges ahead of us. What does this really mean, and what we are trying to achieve is what we are going to discuss with you today. On that occasion, I would like to welcome the Member of Board for Technical Development, Thomas Ulbrich. Thomas, we are happy to have you. Thomas, I spoke about new challenges already. What are the main driving forces that are going to influence the development process of vehicles in the future? Hello to every one of you, says Mr. Ulbrich. Robin, I think there is only one buzzword that needs to be mentioned in this context, and that's software, because software is in the core and the driving force of all our transformation. In the past, the world was simple. The VW Beetle consisted of hardware. There was not one single line of code in it. But our ID models today are completely different. They consist of more software than hardware. And let me give you the ID4 as an example. 100 million lines of code can be found in it, 10 times as much as in a good smartphone, in a good mobile phone. And it is to be assumed that our electric vehicle Trinity, which will be fully functional for autonomous driving, will consist of 2 or 3 times even more lines of code. Mr. Aschoff asked, we've got the largest development unit here in Wolfsburg, 12,000 people working on the future of mobility. I think that's quite simple. Today, people are working on emission exhaust systems and in the future on electric cars. With regards to 12,000 vehicles, this seems like a completely complicated process. How are you going to develop it and how are you going to take people around? Now, if our vehicles change so profoundly, then of course the entire development process has to be redeveloped. Now we are completely shifting from hardware first to software first, from components to software and new features and interconnectivity. This also means that we move from an isolated to an integrated way of cooperation, and that differs profoundly from the past. In the past, we put a very strong focus on the construction of mechanical components, but in the world of connected features, this is completely different. Complex chains of effects require further coordination and cooperation of technical departments. So therefore, today, we first and foremost need to focus on cross-functional communication. Thomas, thank you so much for your information so far. You're going to give us a short introduction later on, but I would like to seize this opportunity to make some statements. After the initial statement of Thomas Ulbrich, we will be more than happy to answer your questions. You can ask them at any given point in time in writing. You've got a separate link for that, or you can use the QR code that you have received. If you want to use it, please follow the instructions and use the masks available for that. Of course, we will try to answer as many of your questions as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very much aware of the fact that this press conference today takes place in a particular situation. We as Volkswagen have received the news about the war in Ukraine with great dismay and shock. Volkswagen continues to hope, like the rest of the world, for a cessation of hostilities and a return to diplomacy. We are convinced that a sustainable solution to the conflict can only be found on the basis of international law. What are the effects on Volkswagen? The worldwide supply network also includes companies in the western part of Ukraine. Due to the current situation, there might be impairments and bottlenecks along the supply chain, and that also has an impact on production. We have already communicated the first steps that were taken. Against the backdrop of the Russian attack on Ukraine and the resulting consequences, the Group Board of Management of Volkswagen has decided today to stop the production of vehicles in Russia until further notice. This decision applies to the Russian production site sites in Kaluga and Nizhny Novgorod. Vehicle exports to Russia will also be stopped with immediate effect. With the extensive interruption of business activities in Russia, the Executive Board is reviewing the consequences of the overall situation during the period of great uncertainty and upheaval. I do know that this topic is very important to all of you, but please bear with us and understand that today we're not going to provide you with any additional information apart from what I've just said. If you would like to get some more information, of course, the Volkswagen Group is more than happy to answer your questions. Ladies and gentlemen, on to the topic that we wanted to discuss today. Volkswagen is in a transformation process. With our strategy ACCELERATE, we presented our plan to the future to you last year. What are the driving forces and what repercussions is it going to have on our products? In a nutshell, here you go.
For decades, Volkswagen has shaped individual mobility. Now Volkswagen is going to change as never before, with a strong vision to become the most desirable brand for sustainable mobility. The shift to e-mobility is accelerating. We are speeding up the transformation, but e-mobility is only one of the four major forces driving the future of vehicles. The real game changer is digitalization, which allows software-defined products, new business models, and autonomous driving. We are right on track with features like over-the-air updates or augmented reality head-up displays. But this is just the beginning. We have a strong plan and a clear strategy. Volkswagen will accelerate even more.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've seen it in the film. Mobility is changing ever so quickly. The entire automotive industry is in a fundamental change. With the change of propulsion, the industry starts the era of green mobility. And the Volkswagen brand was the first, I think we can clearly say, is the first volume producer, has fully moved towards electrification. And we were successful in doing so. Even today, we belong among the globally leading companies in e-mobility. Electrification, however, is only the start. Digitalization will trigger a much more radical change. It will turn the car into a mobile software device. And thus, digitalization will provide a completely different experience with mobility for customers. At Volkswagen, we're using this historic chance, this historic opportunity with our ACCELERATE strategy. We are focusing exactly on these issues. We are giving further move forward in e-mobility, in software with new business models, and then in the long run also with autonomous driving. This is the way how we move and change the brand to become a customer-focused tech company in a very powerful manner. With the mobility of the future, Volkswagen is supposed to be the car of choice for our customers. Pacemaker of accelerator is technical development, or TE for short. We said when the car is turned into an electrically driven software product, then the development has to change in all its dimensions. We've seen that very early on, and we are setting the stage in TE very consistently to move it to the future. Now, technical development here, the Wolfsburg site, is the biggest development unit in the group. It has 11,500 employees, and I think we can say the way we are working here sends a strong signal into the group, into all of the brands and into the regions. And with the planned changeover in technical development, we don't just want to set new standards within the Volkswagen Group, we also want to become one of the most modern and best performing development areas in the entire automotive industry, because the change of the car starts with its development. When the car becomes more and more connected, then car development has also been more connected. If we want to turn Volkswagen into a tech company with connected software-based cars and services, then we also have to work in a more connected manner. I mentioned it at the outset briefly. In former times, technical developers were working with parts. Each and every parts were constructed in a more or less isolated manner and then optimized over time. This was possible because the functions were not all that many or were actually happening in that one particular part. Think about sat-nav, for example. Navigation. Former times you had a road atlas, a road map. Very often you worked together with the passenger to plan the route to go from A to B. And that possibly wasn't very helpful for the mood inside the passenger compartment of the car. If you do it today with a car from our ID range, if you use Sandkamp there, then the system will find the optimal route, not only moving from A to B, it will also be aligned to driving behavior, to road, to temperature, and to accessible charging infrastructure. Of course it does it. So it will be completely adapted to the needs of the users and the current environmental conditions. So with multi-stop route planning, we are optimizing all the routes that will be driven with short charging stops. You will be reaching your target quickly without any detours. So it shows that focusing on components, that will no longer work. Instead, technical development has to focus on functions and systems, which is why we at Volkswagen will be using FUSE. That's the function and system-oriented development, or in other words, it's systems engineering. Systems engineering is something which was used in aviation industry and not necessarily in the automotive industry. But we're changing it because with autonomous driving, with level 4 autonomous driving, a car will be becoming far more complex than some of the aircraft. So the focus or the starting point of vehicle development with FUSE is the requirements of customers vis-à-vis the functions of a car. Just imagine customers want to use their cars as cinemas and want to watch a video, movie, a film. And you can imagine, as soon as fully automatic driving will be available, this will rather be the rule and not the exception. So the requirements to have films in the car, it will have effects on various systems and cars. And systems and components, you need a large screen production area, like in our show Car ID Live, for example, which we've shown in Munich last year. So you need a screen where the film will be shown, and you need adequate interior lighting, and of course the temperature is essential, and it needs an agreeable seating position or reclining position, which also is provided with the adequate safety system so that a passenger, even while lying down, is protected as best as possible when it comes to accidents and consequences of accidents. This might sound rather simple, but if you want to have the feeling that you're in a cinema, if you want to use the car as office space, and development has to start pretty early, because the decisive thing is now, before the car has been fully developed, it's important to bring together the necessary experts at an early point of time in order to check about the requirements and the dependencies of the systems among each other. So that way we make sure that systems and components are adequately configured and constructed. So interdisciplinary teams from all departments right from the start will develop the functions and will do so till the end. In all of the teams, the joint development target and thus customer requirements is what the teams will be focusing on. And then we will have the development marathon and actually split it up into individual sprints. We have shorter development cycles that way, like within the software industry. A run-of-the-mill development process organized by components would not be able to cater for this level of complexity. So design or construction as such alone, that's something which is a thing of the past. Today it's about communication and coordination most and foremost. Communication is essential for technical development of tomorrow, and across technical development needs to include other fields and other areas. So even today, before certain parts are fixed, we determine processes with production, with logistics, with purchasing, and with sales. And this has an effect right down to development. So we have an intensive exchange, in particular with the colleagues from IT, for example, and the area of user experience, because all of the bringing together only this can actually guarantee implementation of customer requirements. And software, of course, that means that we have a very close connection to CARIAD, which is the software unit of the Volkswagen Group. Because for the customer experience, for tomorrow's customer experience, it's not just the driving experience that is decisive, it's the use of the car as an overall space of experience, right down to special services in the fully fledged ecosystem. And our most important partner here is CARIAD, and CARIAD is making use of the same processes, the same methods, and the same tools. And that's important because our interface has to work, because the lion's share of the software that we put into the car, we will receiving that from CARIAD, from our company CARIAD. Only this way will we be able to open up the synergies in the group, because for the cooperation across the various areas, we do need a specific environment to do so. And that's when Sandkamp Campus will come into play. Now, Campus Sandkamp will be the most modern development center in the automotive industry. It will be faster, more modern, more digital, less silos, and more cross-functional cooperation. So this new building will offer space to work for about 4,000 employees. And I believe we can say that it is the construction symbol of transformation in technical development. It consists of a project house and an integration center. The project house has under its roof design, concept development, user experience, product strategy, and of course also the model ranges, technical project management, and the project people from purchasing, finance, production planning, quality assurance, and sales. And, of course, also the developers responsible for the products in the future. The integration center will make sure that we'll have short and efficient coordination and decision-making procedures between the various units. And with the innovative test and simulation infrastructure and the open collaboration areas, it offers an optimal environment for systems and engineering live. Sandkamp Campus will ensure future performance capabilities of technical development. Innovation in development will no longer be just determined by technology development as such, but mostly and mainly also by innovation in the work process. Thus, a Sandkamp Campus is not just a development lab for automotive future. At the same time, it is a kind of lighthouse for the transformation of the world of work at Volkswagen. Volkswagen, in the next 5 years, will invest up to 800 million euros into this new development center. And even now, it is clear that this will be paying off in various areas. Ladies and gentlemen, the change of our processes towards a connected system and function-oriented development will only be successful provided people are behind this type of change and if they like to do it, if they like to be involved here. Because the requirements towards our 11,500 employees in technical development have already changed in various areas, and over the next few years they will be changed almost completely. Development focus is moving away from mechanics alone and moves towards software integration. Instead of exchanging views between experts, it's now about the interaction with other disciplines. Instead of being on your own in your individual office, collaboration in an open space environment will be dominating. We will accompany all of the members of staff in technical development intensively in these fundamental changes. With all the programs, the core is building up important future competencies, with a particular focus on software integration and on the design of the digital customer experience. So employees who so far have focused on developing internal combustion engine cars, we make them fit for the electronic and digital era. Thus, we ensure that there will be employment at Wolfsburg, and we create attractive jobs in an industry for the future. The first more than 100 employees have already used this opportunity and have qualified for new areas in technical development. And in the coming years, most probably thousands of employees will follow their example. To put it more specifically, we'll have about 4,000 employees who we will help to get qualification for their new job profiles, and there will be most probably a further 6,000 to 8,000 employees that will achieve and will reach further qualification. The bandwidth of qualification offers is quite wide. We'll have shorter learning units in order to extend competencies in a very targeted way, and it goes to multi-month or even multi-year long and far-reaching retraining programs. Now, the qualification programs for our employees offer new fields of activities. For example, when it comes to people developing from a metal worker to someone who is operating vehicle technology and commissioning. I'm sure it is an enormous amount of change that our team is faced with, and therefore, just like with our vehicles and cars, with the qualification of our workforce, we go the way of digitalization. So this is made possible through the new digital learning platform, Degreed. With Degreed, we completely revamp learning in our company. The platform is made up of thousands of content units, of learning units, building up on each other, and will have a strongly growing number of expert issues in it. We scale up knowledge transfer in order to live up to increasing demand of qualification among our staff. And at the same time, we provide a new kind of learning culture based on self-organization and intrinsic responsibility. We train our people when it comes to agile methods of work, and we nurture a culture of having end-to-end responsibility. Only when we have a holistic attitude in this change, we will be successful. That means that our mindset has to change. The way we want to work with each other in the future, that's going to be decisive for the success of our strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are changing processes, and we make our team fit for the electronic and the digital era. Thus, we want to be faster, more agile, and better performing, because that is decisive in order to set up Volkswagen for mobility of the future. We are now setting the stage for it to turn Volkswagen into a tech company. And to this end, we need popular software-based vehicles and services, and in technical development we revamp everything. With the Scalable Systems Platform, SSP, we develop a well-performing and scalable platform for the electronic era. This will be coming for the first time in 2026 with the project Trinity, and the outlook is that this is going to replace the modular kits, MEB and PPE. They will merge it first and then replace it. So thus, the SSP platform is going to be the basis for all of the brands and models. So it's going to be the basis for more than 40 million cars in the entire group. In this way, Volkswagen will strengthen its position as the platform champion. Just like with the MEB, SSP will be available for third parties. With the SSP, we'll start the next stage of e-mobility, because the platform allows for the complete integration of the car with its ecosystem. Only this way, new use-based business models and highly complex innovation, like fully automatic driving, are possible. And at the same time, through the connection of the car, we create a completely new environment and experience for mobility for customers, because the true power of the car does no longer come from the hardware, it actually comes from software. Thus, it stays always up to date, and it can do so across the entire life cycle, because software can be updated, no problem, it can be upgraded, and new functions can be included without having to go to your workshop or having to go to the dealerships. 2021, we started with over-the-air functionalities with our ID models. And we did so for new cars and also for cars that were in the field. When we take a look back, we can see that in the first wave, we supplied more than 60,000 customers, in the second wave, more than 50,000 customers, as the first car provider offering this in the volume segment. With great software functions, we can do away with quite a number of varieties in hardware variants. Let me give you an example. The Golf today, if you really used all of the opportunities in ordering, offers a potential of about 10 million configurations. With the Trinity, there will only be about 140. And still, we give our customers in the future more possibilities to individualize their cars than before, because now what happens, or so far what happened, is when they buy a car, customers had to decide for shape or configuration for their car, for the equipment of their car, and they were bound by that till they bought a new car. Now, in the future, customers have a car which will always be up to date, and a car that can actually be flexibly adapted to the way of use. And that thanks to the consistent separation between hardware and software, because this way standardization and individualization are no contradiction. So hardware is going to be standardized. Software can be added even after the car has been bought. It can be added, or it can come into the car through over-the-air updates. For example, take assistance system. When you buy a new car, instead of spending lots of money for, say, an autopilot function, customers can now actually book the desired function and release it on demand in the car whenever they need it. And the same is true for autonomous driving. So this rather expensive technology will actually can be paid for by many people, because the idea of democratization of high-value technology, well, this has been an idea for generations. It belongs to our Volkswagen DNA. So, ladies and gentlemen, you see software is going to be the central focus which we direct our processes, our way of working, our products towards. So we want to become one of the most modern and best performing development areas in the entire automotive industry. The changeover of technical development thus also puts the performance of the Volkswagen brand to, I believe, to completely new level. Development times will be reduced. Former times, today, we need about 50 months to have a car product. In the future, in the foreseeable future, it will just be 40 months. So, in the future, we will be about 25% faster. The basis for this is a general software basic architecture, which will be developed in ever faster evolution cycles. And production times will be decreased, because production will be closely connected during car development, and it can have an influence on how standardized hardware will be designed. So we want to produce the Trinity in just 10 hours. And it's not just us benefiting from these reduced development and production times. It's also, and specifically, the customers. New cars will be available much faster. So, ladies and gentlemen, with TE Accelerate, we set the stage in 2021 in order to turn technical development into the pacemaker of Volkswagen transformation in the next few years. From hardware first, we move to software first. From focus on components, we move towards systems engineering. We'll have all-encompassing development processes consistently directed towards customer requirements and software. We have extensive qualification programs in order to make the technical development team fit for new tasks and new ways of working. And we do that very consistently. We shorten the development times of new cars by about 25%, and we create the prerequisite for accelerating or reducing the production time per car. Now, on this way, we will also provide lots of acceleration for production towards the 10-hour target. And in this year, these changes will become visible for the very first time. First of all, of course, with the groundbreaking for the campus Sandkamp that I talked about before. The next few years will be rather exciting and rather intensive years. And in 2026, it will finally be happening. Then our flagship Trinity will be appearing, and then Volkswagen technical development will again write mobility history. Thank you very much.
Thomas, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to start off with the first round of questions. Let me remind you of the fact that you can use the mask that we made available to you for asking questions. We hope that we'll be able to answer as many questions of yours in the next 30 minutes to come. Thomas, please take a seat. Let's start off with the Campus Sandkamp. You elaborated on this already. It's going to be the most modern development center of the automotive sector. By and large, it's like the dream of each technology nerd. What can the employees look forward to, and how are you going to develop the project? It doesn't only sound like it, but it's going to become a reality. And this is what I just described in the course of my short introduction. It's more about processes and the right mindset and commitment and cross-sectional cooperation and coordination than anything else. And this is why the campus, as viewed by our staff, will become the most modern and the most pleasant place to work at within the group. Mr. Ashraf said, a question from Nikkei. Is Volkswagen not at the beginning of the mobility trend? How much energy did it require to bring about a profound mindset? I don't think that we're at the very beginning, says Mr. Ulbrich. With our transformation towards the Golf 8 and towards the ID3, we have already laid the foundation for a new software development for the future. We had to learn, and we learned rather quickly what it takes. Now we have developed a regulatory software process, so we can actually already use the vast body of expertise that we've put together. And I think it's really true to say that many of our employees, due to the experience gained with the MEB, have already seen and learned how processes have to be adjusted. And this, of course, has an influence on the right mindset. Of course, we are not yet there. It's a long path that we have embarked upon. We still have a long way to go, but we have already started our journey. I think it's a process that will help us reach Trinity in due course. Question going into a similar direction from Mr. Söderhall from Sweden. Here, put a focus on software. What is going to be the most tremendous challenge in the course of the transformation process, and how can you attract the best possible developers? The most important challenge, of course, will be to ensure that we have this cross-functional cooperation and coordination. Due to the complexity of the processes, we can no longer afford to work in isolation when we develop a car, but within the vehicle, from the front left to the far right, we've got to bring all the experts together and pool all the impulses and pool the expertise in order to get the best possible results out of it in the interest of our customers. That's the technical challenge. With regards to the management and the leadership, the most important challenge is to bring about the right mindsets, to make sure that we can optimize our cycles as quickly as possible, because the software of today is better than the one from yesterday, but what's even more important and better is the software of tomorrow. And this is not only a synonymous term, but is something that we need to develop on a daily basis. I think the best developers can be recruited slowly but surely by making sure that we present ourselves in the public by conveying this message, by informing the general public about the vehicle of the future can be, what features it will have. And this provides a great incentive to many developers at Volkswagen to be part of the game, to be involved, to stay on board in order to give shape to the transformation of the vehicles of the future. Now we talk about talent marketing. Is that maybe one of the reasons why we have pooled the software competence in CARIAD in order to bring about a new mindset and of a new work environment? Yes, is Mr. Ulbrich's answer. That is most definitely so, because the consolidation makes it possible and makes it easier for us to streamline processes and tools and methods and bring people onto this particular journey. But the success proves us right, because when you look at CARIAD already today, we can see how people are working in a different fashion and how people are made enthusiastic because working in an agile way is fun. One particular topic you spoke about is what Mr. Rother wanted to know. How do the development times change over time? How can you prevent it from happening that slow launch processes such as the ID3 will happen and that deliveries can be organized very smoothly? Short cycles can be made possible due to virtual technologies, which are now available in an unprecedented manner, which was not the case 5 years ago. We are all familiar with it. We all know it from our working environment. Potential evolutionary processes take place at very short space of time, and this provides us with ample opportunities. The topic of the software situation that you justifiably allude to has a lot to do with the fact that the basic architecture needs to be thought about till the very end, although we have not really programmed it. And this also needs to be included in our processes. With the integration process, with the integration center in our campus, we will try to that this will be ensured. Continuous integration is ongoing, consistent optimization at test beds and virtually as well, simultaneously, and also remote the world over. That is something that is completely different from what we did 5, 8 or 10 years ago, when the software had to be assembled in the car in order to be included in the car, in order to be tried and tested. Everything can be done much more quickly. And with regards to the cycle tests, everything can be accelerated and our software systems will be much more resilient. And this is how we can reach that level.
Michael Freitag from Manager magazine asks, you have talked about the cooperation with CARIAD. So how much CARIAD will there be in Wolfsburg? With how many people will the software unit be represented in Wolfsburg? Answer. Well, I don't think it's so much important to say what's the split between Wolfsburg and Ingolstadt or China. We brought CARIAD to China now as well. All in all, I believe in a relatively short span of time, we'll move that up to 6,500 people, and then projects specifically, it will be all about where these people are according to certain projects. I think the lion's share of the extent that will be done by CARIAD will be about integration, and that will happen about 50-50 in Ingolstadt and Wolfsburg, but coding will happen internationally and will only be coming together there. Mr. Rother has talked about the problematic, supposedly problematic start with the software in ID3. We're now with the next software level with ID4 and bus. What's the leap of performance between those variants? I think that leap is an enormous one. Mr. Rother quite rightfully said there were some difficulties in introduction right at the very beginning. That was version 1.0. We have 2.3 in the field since middle of last year, and I think we have shown that the satisfaction customers with software 2.3 or version 2.3 provides stability and fun for everyday life. Now with 3.0, now that's quite an enormous leap also when it comes to the contents, because 3.0 will have quite a number of added functionalities, right to the use of, down to the use of swarm data and further automated driving functions, not autonomous, but automated. And that's a permanent evolutionary process. So to give you a brief answer, the leap is quite a big one towards 3.0. first reports showed it. We had test drives with the ID bars with the new software option, and the feedback is a very good one. Still, here is another question on the software 3.0. Why does Volkswagen currently, or with the software 3.0, do not use the opportunity to offer content from Netflix or YouTube to drivers? This is a big wish of many drivers, and it would actually improve the user experience when they charge their cars and stop. Answer, yes, that's understandable. See it, it's in the concept, it's in development, but with 3.0 we can't yet do it. With 3.0 we do something against the boring situation of having to withstand charging. We'll offer plays and games, rather simple games. We want to start with them, that's a good step, but yes, it's right, the services that were mentioned actually are very attractive to customers, and as I said, concept is here, but in the process it's not yet in there in 3.0. I think Mr. Pieper has a question on the content. What does standardized hardware mean for the model variety? Answer, okay, standardized hardware and model variety, well, that means that the variance for production and for suppliers can be extremely low, right to the extreme variance equaling 1, but with the same hardware I can still offer different functionalities in the car because the software is using the hardware differently, and thus the car is actually something which can be designed and designed retrospectively by customers. We have to use the right way between simple and rather elaborate hardware and standardize it at that particular level, and thus we don't want to create the one standard car. I'd like to stress it. It's not going to be the one standard car. The car from the outside will still be highly attractive and also to a certain extent customer specific, but true individualization comes from the same hardware, but through individual software areas you can actually make 4 different functions. Thomas, thank you. There are a couple of questions on qualification of staff. Ms. Schmitz from Braunschweiger newspaper wants to know when will the groundbreaking be for Campus Sandkamp, so I'm looking forward to you making a statement on that. And how high is the share of people in technical development who were further qualified, and where do these people come from most of all? Well, I'd like to ask for your understanding that public announcement of groundbreaking, we have to wait with that. I assumed as much, says Mr. Aschoff. But it's going to be happening this year for sure. So order of magnitude of the people who require qualification, well, of course, you have to distinguish what does qualification mean. Is it a simple seminar? One seminar is qualification, but that's not a real change. Change in the activity when it comes to the contents or going to different processes or different contexts. That's between 40 and 60%. There's between 40 and 60% of necessity between the next 3 to 5 years, and the qualification or where the people come from who will be qualified, well, it actually is across the entire bandwidth of technical development, and I think that's what the question wants to head to. Through electrification, we do have parts in the car where we have a finite future. Take the development of internal combustion engines and the development for all that needs to go with that, be it tanks, etc. So in that context, qualification shares will be highest among the people working there, because we need to make sure that we can offer help to our employees to move into the future and to do so right in time. So it's not a process where we'll be waiting till the last ICE engine has been made and finalized. No, we'll by qualify people, provide people the opportunity to change.
One question from Autopista in Spain. Might the further development of the software lead to the situation that the customer always have the feeling it's sitting in an incomplete car? No, I wouldn't put it like that, says Mr. Ulbrich. I don't think that somebody uses his cell phone as being incomplete. The opposite is the case. The mobile phone is a device today which offers excellent, super feelings, which facilitate your everyday life on an ongoing basis due to continuous optimization. But optimization, of course, also means optimization is leading towards the goal of becoming perfect, but this must not necessarily be attainable because a mobile phone today still has a lot of flaws, but they're being corrected on a regular basis, and the same will apply to cars. The only difference being that there will be certain areas in vehicles where flaws and faults are not acceptable because cars are a safety and security device, and issues such as brakes, steering, safety features do not accept any failure tolerances. You know, here we do not optimize processes, but we make everything perfect before we hand it out to the customer. Back to the core of the question, I think it is not something that should be called incomplete, but it is a continuous ongoing optimization process, which is fun. Yes, and Mr. Aschoff said it also holds true for mobile phones. You know, nobody has the feeling that mobile phones are incomplete. Mr. Zeiland from automobile industry has a question. What does it mean that you turn away from components for suppliers? Will they have fewer partners to cooperate with in the future? Mr. Ulbrich's reply, I don't think so. I don't think the number of partners will decline, but there will be some partners which will offer integrated components per se, where features can be brought together in the hardware solutions already. But basically speaking, a vehicle of the future will consist of almost a similar number of parts that will have to be assembled in the hardware of the vehicle. So there is no reason to assume that this will have to be consolidated. A question from Robin Schiff from Robin TV says, Mr. Aschoff, will there be possibilities to ramp up the hardware processes for vehicles which are still quite old in order to make sure that software can be used and run smoothly? Robin, that's a question that I really expected from you, or should have expected from you, rather. This is really top of the class when you bring about improvements at this particular level in order to increase quality even further. I think this is something that will be possible in the future, but not right now. It has a lot to do with the basic evaluation of processes as such. To which extent can backward compatibility between the different generations of processes be ensured over the developing and manufacturing suppliers? That remains to be seen. A question from Israel. You spoke about the vehicle as a cinema theater. How are you going to deal with customers who want to drive their car independently? No probs, says Mr. Ulbrich. A Volkswagen of the future will also be a lot of fun if you want to drive it yourself. Because only if we focus on software, this does not mean that the basic features and our core DNA, our main attributes such as dynamic driving, excellent road adhesion and fitness for everyday operations will be neglected. The opposite is the case. We will continue to work on that, because that is something of which you can say that this is very specific and unique for Volkswagen. We are not going to move away from that at all. So it will not be possible not to drive your car at all, or not be allowed to drive your car at all. Quite the opposite is the case. You can decide when you want to drive and when you want to be driven. Right, there is an additional question concerning the bi-directional activities. When will this be available and what can this offer? Bidirectional charging, says Mr. Ulbrich, will become possible with the software version 3.0 in the vehicles. Thus, the vehicle, and this is where we move one step ahead in the entire chain, we have to focus on infrastructure. There are some manufacturers which offer this feature already that our vehicles can interact with. And one day, we will also have to make sure that grid-compatible charging will become possible. Just you have to bear the following in mind. This is something of an area of the future that we have committed ourselves to as Volkswagen, because we want to contribute to energy transition as far as we can. And if we launch these vehicles in the market, now a period will have to follow within which partly some additional pioneering work still needs to be done in cooperation and coordination with the hardware, with the infrastructure providers. This needs to be optimized and be made more perfect. So therefore, we might start off with the vehicles because there's hardware already available and infrastructure that is available can be used for that purpose, but then we've got to pave the way into the future. Similar to the introduction of e-mobility, yes, correctly, but the vehicles were there, but then it took some time before the legislation and the infrastructure followed suit. That is absolutely the case. Legislation and regulations will have to cover the most important components because bidirectional charging has two aspects. First of all, this is the contribution to the energy transition process, meaning ever greener driving. But it also has some very attractive financial incentives. And here it will depend very much on the way in which regulations will be adjusted in the different markets. It makes a lot of logical and industrial sense to introduce flexible electricity prices. And here we closely cooperate with the responsible authorities, and we do hope and work towards the fact that this will become a reality because we want our customers to be able to benefit from that.
Thomas Hendrik Mordziefer from Tagesspiegel wants to know, you have talked about the interdisciplinary agile cooperation of TE with purchasing. What's the weight of the delivery chain and how much of a break is the problems in delivery chain situations? Well, the delivery chain has a big importance. Developers and procurement needs to work close together. That's mandatory. And then the supply chain needs to be perfected. That has to be part and parcel of the project house within the campus and the changed development and procurement processes. And to do that and to provide some securing, that's important. That's what's shown by the current situation with semiconductors. I'm sure there will be a need and a demand to have a much broader footing for it in the future. Mr. Mordziefer, we would have to discuss it with Murat Aksel, head of sourcing, and I'd like to refer you to the annual press conference on the 16th of March. There we will be able to deal with all of these questions. Question on SSP. How short will be the shortest possible vehicle on the future SSP platform? Answer. Well, as Volkswagen and a platform supplier for the group, we always want to cater for the entire portfolio. We've shown that we can do it with the MQB. MQB is available for A0 right down to B+. Now, SSP in the long run will have the target to cater for a similar range, but it's a question of what's happening over time. And also it needs to be seen that smaller cars are getting bigger and bigger. What is an A0 car today? 10 years ago, that was a medium-sized A or A+ car. So I can't give you any length indication, but it's clear that we want to supply our portfolio with the SSP over the course of time. First car in 2026 with SSP, so there's a bit of time till then. And another question dealing with Trinity and the SSP, Jürgen Vogt from Autozeitung wants to know, well, the Audi project Artemis, how is that coming into the new development processes? Technologies developed at Artemis, will they also be coming into Trinity from Volkswagen and other SSP-based projects? Answer, yes. There will be a certain share of it in it. What we do, what both of us do, that's Audi and Volkswagen, we want to provide the basis for becoming a tech company. It's based on software, on an e-architecture, and that comes from CARIAD, and that goes to the two brands. So an Artemis and subsequently a Trinity, of course, will share quite a bit of common e-architecture, and therefore there will be functions being transferred to the one or the other. But Artemis is a car which will be coming in a completely different segment. So there's not going to be a rollover one-on-one. Mr. Brinkman asks, software that is not differentiating or determining the brand, will that be bought in or catered for by open source code? Oh, all of it to a certain share. Of course, there will be standardized tools that we will be using, and of course, there will be open source code there. But as regards the vehicle and car specifics as to how the car will be driving, how the car will be going, how it will be braking, and how it will talk to me, those are specifics will be our intrinsic development. But that's rather a line of questioning which I would need to answer together with Dirk Hilgenberg as the head of CARIAD. I'm sure Dirk Hilgenberg would be the person who would be the right to contact here. Another question, I think it comes from Finland, probably wrong, but I suppose it comes from Finland. Would you say that the development of the ID model was identical with the development of ICEs in Golf, or on the way was there already an evolution in the development of cars? Well, yes, definitely there was one. With the MEB, that is the basis for ID3, we did some initial steps, and in other models we worked in a different mode of cooperation, and we collected some experience and we learned a couple of things, and with that knowledge as a basis, we are now doing the complete transformation of technical development, thus moving it in the right way and securing its success. In the new digital era, the question is, where does the analog philosophy of GTE models come? We are laughing here because that's a question that we are discussing quite often. Answer yes, I want to confirm what Robin is saying here. GTI is something which is very characteristic for the Volkswagen brand in various areas, and we are trying to do everything so that GTI or the GTIs of the electronic era would be able to seamlessly be linked to what a GTI of the ICE world can provide, namely emotional driving, sporty driving. And ID4 GTX was the first entry point there, but I can promise even today that we will continue working on it, and the GTXs of tomorrow will be those as the like the GTIs from before. Florence Lagarde, can you imagine cooperating with Google or Amazon with the development of operating systems? Answer, well, this is a question. If we look at the automotive industry today, is a question that is being discussed everywhere. However, an operating system is the core and is the major know-how of the party standing for the product. So directly, operational services, no, but in fringe areas to use individual services like we have it today, partly at least, with certain parts that we put in the car, yes.
Thomas, we are reaching the end of this round of questions. Therefore, one last question. Based on which OS will the future infotainment system be? Do you have an App Store partner? Do you plan to make the hardware sets of data of CARIAD visible? Is what one of our colleagues would like to know. Mr. Ulbrich replies, well, there will be a worldwide known operating system that we will also use for the infotainment system, and thus it will become possible to use various different app stores and interaction based on the app stores with customers and developers can become possible. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of our round of questions and the end of this event. If there are any further questions that remain to be unanswered, we are more than happy to answer them after this event. The Volkswagen communication, namely Stefan Vosswinkel, Christoph Ludwig, and myself, are more than happy to answer them. Thanks very much to you, Thomas. Thanks very much for giving us an insight into the transformation process in the fields of technical development. I wish you every possible success, a lot of fun, a lot remains to be done, but we wish you all the best. Mr. Ulbrich, Price, thank you very much to all of you. Mr. Aschoff says thanks very much to all of you. Thanks very much for your time and your attention. We were happy to have you here today. Let me draw your attention to the Digital World First of the ID Bots on the 9th of March at 7 p.m. You will get access to this in the Volkswagen newsroom. If you wish, get connected. We're more than happy. Apart from that, I wish you all the best. Stay safe. See you again next time. Bye-bye.